Good evening. It's a very cold Friday evening, so I thought to try and get my preview of the Arsenal game up in ample time before the game actually kicks off, rather than the usual sort of half an hour before like I normally do. And it's a weird one going into this game. A couple of weeks ago, I would have probably been not too bothered about the result. We were in the midst of quite a poor run of form. Couldn't really see where our next good performance was coming from. And wasn't too fussed about the competition, to be perfectly honest. I was more focusing on getting it a bit more of a consistent level of play in the league and not getting distracted by cup competitions. It's surprising how one decent performance against a good side can change your perspective somewhat. And I think for a lot of people going into this game this week, they're going into it with damn sight more enthusiasm and optimism than they would have done a week ago. On the back of a good performance, a decent result, which could and probably should have been more. As well as that, we've had Ahmad signing a new contract, which I think takes him up to 2030, if memory serves. And this sort of quite pleasing run of positive information and news coming from United, as I think is what's helped to improve people's expectations somewhat. So we're going into a game against a team that we lost, unfortunately, I think, against a couple of weeks ago when we played Arsenal in the league, which, let's face it, apart from these set pieces, there wasn't a great deal to choose between the sides, given that we weren't playing particularly well at the time, or certainly not getting the results at the time. It's quite interesting to see how we compare how we play on Sunday against how we did when we played them a couple of weeks ago. Up until a couple of weeks ago, there had been a heavy emphasis on rotating the squad with Amorim, and I think it was quite hard to tell whether he was doing that because he just was trying to give people a bit of game time, see how they do in match situations, or whether he's just giving people enough rope to hang themselves with. Given the pretty much 2 weeks of training that we've had, we've only get one game in the middle of all that. It'll be quite interesting to see whether he changes the side an awful lot and how we play if he does. His press conference for the game was this afternoon about 1:30, and in that press conference he did mention that he's now got to a point where he's not rotating to try people out. He's rotating less than he had to before, and when he's rotating now, he's doing it to keep people fresh, so he's not sort of running certain players into the ground. And I think that's probably the situation of where people wanted him to be a few weeks ago without necessarily appreciating what he was trying to do. Which does then raise the question of what's his lineup going to be. After the performance against Liverpool on the back of a week's training, we've now had another week's training. Didn't seem to have picked up any new injuries from the Liverpool game. So it asks a question, begs the question, should I say, does he go with the same team that started against Liverpool, or does he tweak it a little bit? And we've already got an answer to some of that already. In his press conference today, he said that Bayern is definitely going to start. Whether that's a bit of a sort of psychological thing, given that the last time he played, he didn't exactly cover himself in glory, and he's just sort of trying to show that he has trust and faith in him. I'm not too sure, but I don't think giving Onana a game off is necessarily the worst thing in the world either. Surprised? Yes, I am a little bit, to be perfectly honest. Goalkeeper's a funny position, and I think especially in the style of play that we're trying to play now, where the keeper's role is expanded to become almost essentially a supplementary centre half at times. Whether Bayern's got enough experience of that with the players he's going to be doing it with, I don't know. I suppose if you're going to take a bit of a punt, do it in a cup game rather than a league game, given our precarious league position. That being said, do I see much change in the rest of the team? I suppose the only change I would look at possibly is starting Euro and playing him as right centre. I think they do seem to be taking the time easing him into the side. He's getting half an hour here, 20 minutes there. Occasionally he will start a game, but they do seem to be pacing it very, very slowly with him. But I think against a team like Arsenal, I think this might actually be a very good game for him to start. I think the style of play that Arsenal have, it's not going to be somebody lumping balls into the box. I wouldn't have thought, because they don't really have much of a forward, and certainly the forwards that they do have don't suit that style of play anyway. So I think starting Euro would make a lot of sense. Centre back. There's an argument for either Maguire or De Ligt starting that game. Maguire had a good game against Liverpool, but you do wonder whether it's necessary for him to be played again on Sunday when we've got Brighton, I think it is in the week, or is it Southampton, can't remember. But we have got a game a couple of days later with two quality centre-halves that could easily play those roles. I could understand the argument for starting De Ligt and having Maguire on the bench, with the possibility of Maguire starting the game in midweek and De Ligt being either playing at right centre or being on the bench. I don't think there's a massive drop in quality in whichever one starts, to be perfectly honest. And left centre back, it's going to have to be Martinez. I think he played well on Sunday against Liverpool, and you've not been able to say that too often about him over this season. He may well be one of those players that when he's playing well or has a bit of confidence, he needs to be kept playing. We haven't exactly overloaded with options in that position anyway, so I think we're going to have to play him. The midfield four, I think he's Cobby's played better. He certainly played better against Liverpool after sort of a slow 5-10 minutes, and he played well against Newcastle when he come on. Given that he does seem to be finding his stride a little bit, taking him out of the side now wouldn't make a great deal of sense to me. Some people, you have to, when they're on a bit of a hot streak, you need to sort of make the most of that. He's had a very bitty start to the season, and his performances have reflected that. The last couple of performances haven't. They've been more like what we probably expected. So I would be very reluctant to take him out of the side. And again, Ugarte, same deal. I think he's had a rotating cast of midfield partners over since he joined the club. That can't carry on forever. We don't have a great deal of choice in that area anyway. And if our top two is going to be Mainoo and Ugarte, they need to be playing regularly, because they need to get used to each other's style of play and picking up on the nuances of each other's game. They're not going to do that watching. They need to be playing. So I personally would start those two as our midfield two. The left and right wing backs, I think Dalot again. I think he had a far better game against Liverpool than anybody was expecting. I'm not saying he was perfect. He wasn't, but he was very good. I'm not sort of damning him with faint praise. He was very good on Sunday. Again, lack of options, and on the back of a good performance, I would be reluctant to change that out for any particular reason. I certainly wouldn't rotate him just for the fun of it. I wouldn't be surprised if he played Manchetser, but I don't think that would be a very good move, to be perfectly honest. I don't see the benefits of that. I think Manchetser, when he has played, has looked so far off the pace. Playing a quick, tricky side like Arsenal is just going to show even more to me. So I don't think he should be anywhere near the starting 11, and I don't think he will be. And right wing back, I think you would probably be looking at starting. It'd be easy to say start with Mazraoui. But I think there is an argument for starting Ahmad there as well. Because I don't think Ahmad looks to be betting either the right-sided wing-back or the right-sided number 10. There's not much of a drop-off for me. In some ways, I think his energy levels actually suit right wing-back more than they suit the number 10 position. I don't really mind too much. I suppose the only argument, the only reason I'm thinking that he might end up playing right wing-back is that I can see them maybe giving Garnacho a start. And if they're going to give Garnacho a start, he's going to be taking up one of the number 10 positions, and I think Bruno's going to be taking up the other. So I think maybe rest Mazraoui, who's played a lot of football for us since he joined, and playing Ahmad at right wing back, and then playing Bruno and Garnacho as the 2 10s. Bruno, I think he's going to have to start anyway. I think he surprised people with the discipline that he exhibited against Liverpool. I think there wasn't an awful lot of room for his more cavalier aspects of his game on Sunday. I think it had been drilled into him and the rest of the team that they had very clear roles to perform, and they weren't too veer from them at all. And in general, I don't think Bruno did. I think he had a very good, very disciplined game. Again, I suppose the only reason you could think of him maybe not starting is to give him a break, and then they could maybe start Ahmad and Garnacho as the 2 10s, and then play Mazraoui as the right wing back. We do. It's weird actually talking about this, and when you start to talk about it, you think, well, we do actually have options in some of these positions, and that hasn't necessarily been the narrative over the last couple of months. It's been the lack of options more than the options that we do have. So I think there's quite a lot of wiggle room in some of these positions. And starting up front, I'm going to say he's going to give Xerxes a run. No real reason for that, to be honest. I think he was all right when he come on. He was only on for 10-15 minutes on Sunday, but he was okay. Yes, he bobbled a pass across to Maguire when a rolled pass would have undoubtedly resulted in Maguire scoring. But I think, generally speaking, positionally, and I don't think he did an awful lot wrong in 10 minutes. And on the flip side of that, Højlund has played a lot of minutes, and he's done an awful lot of work without reaping the benefits from that work. He's made, certainly against Liverpool, he made lots of... He kept their centre-halves busy. He made lots of sort of inside channel runs and that sort of stuff. You can't do that without it starting to sap your energy levels at some point. And I think it may well be a nice game to give him a bit of a break and start him on the bench, and then bring him on for the last half hour if needed. And Xerxes could do it again. You know, his last start lasted half an hour. He got 10 minutes against Liverpool. The lad probably needs a bit of run out. I'm not saying that the substitution against Newcastle is going to be eating away at him, but he might. And the longer it's left, it's not necessarily going to get an awful lot better. It was good to see he got a nice reception from the away fans on Sunday. He was always going to. The people that go to away games don't tend to be the petulant, I'm here to be entertained, lots of vibe you get from some members of the home crowd at times, which there's a lot more tolerance, a lot more understanding, and a lot more appreciation of what the players are actually trying to do from away fans. And personally, I think that was why he got such a nice reception from the away fans on Sunday. So I can see them being a couple of changes. One he's already admitted to, and a couple of tweaks here and there, but I do think it's only going to be a couple of tweaks. As I say, it could easily be Ahmad starting at right wing back to give Mazraoui a rest, and starting Garnacho in one of the 10s, as opposed to starting Ahmad in one of the 10s and starting Xerxes up front instead of Højlund, and maybe bringing him on for the last sort of 20 minutes. And at centre back, possibly Euro, I think that would make sense to me. And the centre half, much of a muchness. I don't think there's an awful lot to choose between Maguire and De Ligt anyway. The only thing that come to mind when thinking about who they might start would be they might start De Ligt, because Maguire's 6 years older than him. They played a hard game against Liverpool. They got another game in midweek. Why flog somebody to death? That was essentially my thinking. And I suppose another factor in this is the Arsenal side that they're going to put out, because it seems weird, but we seem to be playing a side that's got more significant injuries than we have. And you've not been able to say that for about 18 months. I think out of what you would consider to be Arsenal's starting lineup, or certainly sort of starting, first choice 15 or so, I think they've got Saka missing, Ben White, no great loss for me, Tomiyasu, and the young lad, what's his name? Is it Waneri? I may not have pronounced that exactly right, but he's only young, but he looks like a decent player. Looks like he's got a bit of ability. But I think all four of those are out for Sunday, as I'm speaking now, anyway. So that could have quite an impact on how Arsenal play. They got beat against Newcastle the other night, and actually properly got beat by Newcastle. Newcastle had a very good game plan, stuck to it really well, and defended like buggery when they got 2-0 up. There's a video out on 442 about Newcastle's formation with that game. If that's your thing, it's well worth a watch, and because it's actually really interesting what they did. And yeah, so they're coming on the back of quite a significant defeat in the cup competition. They're not exactly setting the world alight at the moment. They've got a few significant injuries, and some of those people, especially Saka and that, could have a real impact. The only other player that you could see who would have more of an impact if he was injured would be Odegaard. As far as I'm aware, he's fit. Almost a pity. But I think, we could be playing Arsenal at an interesting time, as we seem to be on a bit of, not necessarily an upward trajectory, but we're certainly not getting any worse. They do seem to be getting a bit worse, and they seem to be starting to pick up niggling injuries. They don't seem to be able to get going for a defeat or a significant injury. So it could actually be a nice time to play them, which does raise sort of the question that I mentioned at the start, really. A couple of weeks ago, when if I was asked this question, I wouldn't have been particularly asked about the FA Cup. If it meant losing that meant we had a bit more time to train, less of a sort of less impact on our league campaign, I'd have took that, to be honest. I'm not saying throw the game as such, but if we get beat, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I can't say I necessarily feel like that at the moment, because myself, like most of you, I'm sure, saw a lot of reasons to be optimistic from the Liverpool game. More reasons to be optimistic from that game than I did from the City game, because I think, generally speaking, even though we didn't get as positive a result as we did against City, we played better. We looked a better team. We had a far better idea what we were trying to do. And generally speaking, I think for all but about 25 minutes of that game, I thought we were the best side. So I'm going into this game not seeing us making too many significant changes to the starting lineup. The changes that I think we might make don't necessarily downgrade our abilities an awful lot. And I think we're going in against a side that has more significant injuries than we have, coming on the back of a sort of resounding defeat. And I can see us doing it. In his press conference today, Amorim said that they've been working on set pieces. Now, whether he meant defending set pieces or actually doing something constructive with our set pieces, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to assume he was talking about defending set pieces, given that it's been responsible for, I think it was 45% of our goals conceded, up until about a week ago at least. That can't carry on. So I would like to think that when he says he's working on set pieces, it's how to defend them. And that's not a bad thing, because that was all Arsenal really had against us a couple of weeks ago. If we get able to nullify that, then it could be a very interesting game. I'm going to leave it there. I just wanted to, as I say, wanted to try and get this out in good time before the match. I don't know if you've noticed the fancy border and the sort of name thing down there. No, down there. Just trying to make it a little bit more interesting. All I need to do now is get rid of the shit show that's in the background, and it'll look a bit more professional. Anyway, if you have any sort of thoughts on possible lineup, approach to the game, that sort of stuff, by all means drop them in the comments. And yeah, fingers crossed, we get a decent result, and I will see you earlier next week. All right, cheers, bye.